Imagine a world where the most powerful tool for your physical transformation has been hidden in plain sight, disguised as a simple nutrient. For decades, we have been told a story that is at best incomplete, and at worst, a complete misunderstanding of human biology. We were taught that vitamin D is something you get from a glass of fortified milk or a few minutes of casual sunlight. We were told it keeps our bones strong, and that was essentially the end of the conversation. But this narrative is a relic of the past, a mistake born in 1922 when researchers mislabeled this substance as a vitamin. In reality, it is nothing of the sort. What we are dealing with is a potent, life-altering secosteroid hormone. It is a molecule that shares more in common with testosterone and estrogen than it does with vitamin C or vitamin B12. This is the secosteroid revelation, and it is the first key to unlocking a level of physical performance you thought was gone forever. If you are over the age of 40, you likely know the feeling of the invisible ceiling. You walk into the gym with the same dedication you had 10 or 15 years ago. You lift the heavy iron, you track your protein intake, and you prioritize your sleep. Yet, something has changed. The recovery that used to take 24 hours now takes 3 days. The muscle mass that used to come easily now feels like it is slipping through your fingers, replaced by a stubborn layer of fat around your midsection that refuses to leave. This is not just aging. It is a signaling crisis. You are hitting a physiological plateau because your internal environment is no longer receiving the instructions it needs to grow. Your body is operating in a state of maintenance, or worse, a state of slow decay, because the master switch for your DNA is stuck in the off position. You feel like you are doing everything right, but you are fighting a battle against your own biochemistry, and without the right hormonal signal, you are destined to lose. The most frustrating part of this struggle is that the answer is often found in a simple $10 blood test. This test measures your levels of 25-hydroxyvitamin D, yet it is rarely prioritized in standard medical checkups. Most people go through their lives never knowing their number, or they are told they are normal when their levels are just barely enough to keep their bones from softening. But there is a massive difference between surviving and thriving. In the world of high performance and longevity, being just above the deficiency line is like trying to race a high-performance car with only a gallon of low-grade fuel in the tank. To break through the invisible ceiling, we have to move past the outdated medical norms and focus on optimization. This single blood marker holds the key to your metabolic rate, your muscle fiber activation, and your overall hormonal health. It is the bridge between the effort you put in at the gym and the results you see in the mirror. To understand why this matters, we have to talk about genomic authority. Vitamin D is unique because it has its own dedicated receptor, known as the Vitamin D Receptor, which is found in nearly every cell of your body, especially within the nuclei of your skeletal muscle. When this hormone enters the cell, it does not just hang around in the fluid. It travels straight into the heart of your genetic code. It binds to your DNA and begins flipping switches. It tells your body to build more muscle protein, to burn more fat for fuel, and to increase the density of your mitochondria, which are the power plants of your cells. This is not a subtle suggestion. It is a direct command. This is why we call it genomic authority. Without sufficient levels of this secosteroid, your DNA is essentially an instruction manual with the most important pages torn out. You can have all the protein and all the training in the world, but if the genomic signal is missing, the machinery of hypertrophy and fat loss will remain dormant. This is a quiet urgency that we can no longer ignore. We are correcting a decades-long oversight that has limited the potential of millions of people as they age. By optimizing this hormonal pathway, we are not just supplementing a diet. We are engaging a master control system for longevity and strength. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. This journey into the genomic landscape is only beginning, and understanding the power of this hormone is the first step in reclaiming the vitality of your youth with the wisdom of the present. The path to a total body recomposition is not found in a new exercise or a fad diet, but in the very core of your genetic expression. The realization that you can influence your DNA through a single, often neglected hormone is the ultimate empowerment. We are moving away from the inevitability of aging and toward the precision of biochemistry. Your body has been waiting for the right signal, and it is time you finally learned how to send it. Your journey from a state of frustration to a state of optimized performance starts with recognizing the true power of the Secosteroid sitting on your shelf. The path of transformation begins on the surface of your body, where the external world meets your internal biology. When ultraviolet B radiation penetrates the epidermis, it triggers a sophisticated chemical reaction with a specialized form of cholesterol known as 7-dehydrocholesterol. This is the genesis of the hormone. It is a moment of synthesis where your body creates the raw materials for its own biological optimization. This substance then enters the circulation, drifting through the bloodstream until it reaches the liver. In the liver, the first major transformation occurs. This process, known as 25-hydroxylation, creates the primary circulating form of the hormone, 25-hydroxyvitamin D. This is the molecule that your doctor looks for during a standard blood panel. This form is actually a reservoir. Think of it as a biological warehouse, a collection of resources waiting for the call to action. It is stable and long-lasting, but in this state, it cannot yet exert its full genomic authority. It is a promise of the power that is yet to be unleashed. That call to action happens at the renal gateway. Your kidneys serve as the ultimate checkpoint and refinery for hormonal activation. Through a highly regulated process called 1-alpha-hydroxylation, the kidneys perform the final chemistry that transforms the stored molecule into 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D, or calcitriol. This is the active hormone in its most potent state. Its creation marks the transition from a nutrient precursor to a true secosteroid hormone with the ability to rewrite your physical destiny. This metabolic pathway has been meticulously cross-referenced with recent clinical pharmacist and researcher reviews to ensure biochemical accuracy. These experts validate that the journey from the sun to the bloodstream is not just a theoretical concept, but a verified physiological reality that governs your vitality. Now that the calcitriol is active, it travels through the body seeking its specific target. In the genomic landscape of the human body, that target is the Vitamin D Receptor, or the VDR. Think of the VDR as a specialized molecular lock. These locks are not scattered randomly throughout your system. They are strategically placed within the heart of nearly every cell. However, for those focused on performance, the most incredible concentration of these receptors is found directly within the nuclei of your skeletal muscle fibers. This location is critical for anyone over the age of 40. When the calcitriol molecule reaches a muscle cell, it does not simply float on the surface. It possesses the unique ability to pass through the outer membrane and move straight into the nucleus, the internal control center where your genetic code is stored. It is here that the hormone finds its receptor and clicks into place. This binding creates a powerful complex that has the immediate authority to change how your body functions at its most fundamental level, bypassing the usual barriers to muscle growth. This mechanism of action is exactly why we must completely reframe our understanding of vitamin D. By definition, a vitamin is a substance that your body cannot produce and must be obtained through your diet. A hormone, however, is a substance produced by one organ that travels through the blood to exert a specific effect on distant tissues through dedicated receptors. Because your body synthesizes this molecule starting in the skin, processes it in the liver, activates it in the kidneys, and sends it to the muscles to bind with the VDR, it functions strictly as an endocrine hormone. It is a high-level chemical messenger carrying instructions for growth and repair. When you realize that you are managing a hormone and not just a simple vitamin, your entire approach to physical optimization shifts. You are no longer just filling a nutritional gap. You are managing a complex endocrine axis that dictates the shape and strength of your being. The presence of the VDR in muscle tissue is the reason why your strength and body composition are so tightly linked to your serum levels. For the individual over 40, these receptors are the front line of the battle against muscle loss and metabolic slowdown. As we age, the density and sensitivity of these receptors can begin to shift, but the presence of the active hormone remains the primary signal for muscle fiber maintenance. When the VDR complex is fully engaged, it sets off a cascade of genetic events that we will explore in the coming stages. It is essential to respect the complexity of this system. The journey from 7-dehydrocholesterol to calcitriol is a multi-stage process that requires your organs to be in perfect harmony. Every step in this pathway is an opportunity for optimization. By understanding the renal gateway and the molecular lock of the VDR, you are arming yourself with the knowledge needed to break through that invisible ceiling. The moment the calcitriol and vitamin D receptor complex settles onto the vitamin D response elements of your deoxyribonucleic acid, the true genomic authority of this secosteroid is revealed. Imagine your genetic code as an immense library containing thousands of instruction manuals for every protein and structure in your body. For many individuals over the age of 40, large sections of this library have become dusty and inaccessible, leading to the metabolic plateau and muscle loss commonly associated with aging. However, when you achieve optimal levels of active vitamin D, this hormone acts as a master key, unlocking the specific manuals required for muscle protein synthesis and structural repair. This binding to the vitamin D response elements is essentially flipping a switch on genes that have been dormant for years. It is a precise biochemical command that tells your body to prioritize the creation of new contractile proteins, which are the fundamental building blocks of muscle mass and strength. This genetic signaling is not generalized. It is highly specific to the tissues that define your physical capability. Research has shown that the density of vitamin D receptors is particularly high in type 2 muscle fibers. These are your fast-twitch fibers, the ones responsible for explosive power, speed, and the visual density of a well-developed physique. As we cross the threshold of 40, these type 2 fibers are often the first to atrophy, leading to a loss of functional strength and a slowing metabolism. By ensuring that the vitamin D response elements are consistently engaged by calcitriol, you are providing the necessary signal to preserve and even expand these critical fibers. This is where the science of biooptimization moves beyond simple nutrition. We are no longer talking about preventing a deficiency like rickets. We are talking about manipulating a fundamental signaling pathway to overcome the biological resistance of middle age. The precision of this process cannot be overstated. When the calcitriol and VDR complex binds to your DNA, it recruits other co-activator proteins that further amplify the signal. This collective action triggers the production of messenger ribonucleic acid, which carries the instructions from your nucleus to the protein-making machinery of the cell. This is the biological reality behind the understanding that muscle is built in the nucleus. Without the initial signal from the vitamin D receptor, the entire process of hypertrophy is significantly throttled, regardless of how much protein you eat or how hard you train. For the individual over 40, this is often the missing link. You might be putting in the effort at the gym and following a strict diet, but if the genetic instruction manual is closed because of low hormone levels, your body simply will not initiate the growth cascade at its full potential. It is time to discard the outdated notion that vitamin D is merely a supplement for bone health. While bone density is important, the genomic signaling occurring in your skeletal muscle is what determines your metabolic rate and your ability to burn fat effectively. When your DNA receives the signal to build more structural muscle proteins, it also increases the energy demands of the cell. This creates a more favorable environment for body recomposition, where your body becomes more efficient at utilizing stored energy. This is a documented biochemical instruction set that operates with mathematical precision. If the serum levels of 25-hydroxyvitamin D are too low, the signal is weak, and the response elements remain silent. If the levels are optimized, the signal is loud and clear, allowing the 40-plus body to function with a level of anabolic efficiency usually reserved for much younger individuals. The interaction between calcitriol and the vitamin D response elements is the true engine of physical change. When the hormone enters the nucleus and finds its receptor, it undergoes a conformational change that allows it to pair with another receptor called the retinoid X receptor. This pairing is essential because the resulting heterodimer is what actually possesses the high affinity needed to bind to the DNA. Once this powerful duo locks onto the vitamin D response elements, it clears away inhibitory proteins that usually keep your growth genes in a locked state. This is what we mean by flipping the switch. It is a physical removal of the biological obstacles that prevent your muscles from responding to the stimulus of exercise. For anyone over 40, this process is the difference between spinning your wheels and seeing tangible progress. By viewing this process through the lens of genomic signaling, you begin to understand why the standard medical advice of 400 to 1,000 international units per day is often insufficient for those seeking total body recomposition. We are not just trying to survive. We are trying to thrive by saturating the receptors to ensure every available response element is engaged. You are essentially acting as a biological programmer, using the calcitriol molecule to write a more powerful version of your own physical reality. Even as the genomic instructions for growth are being transcribed within the muscle nucleus, your body maintains a sophisticated counter-regulatory system designed to keep muscle mass within a very narrow survival range. This regulatory system is governed primarily by a protein known as myostatin. Think of myostatin as the primary brake on your muscle growth potential. Its biological purpose throughout evolution was to prevent skeletal muscles from becoming excessively large, which would have represented a significant metabolic liability for our ancestors who faced constant food scarcity. However, as the 40-plus bio-optimizer crosses the threshold of middle age, this biological brake often becomes stuck in the engaged position. Myostatin levels naturally begin to rise as we age, signaling the body to halt the production of new muscle tissue and even accelerate the breakdown of existing fibers. This creates a frustrating paradox where the harder you train, the more the internal myostatin brake resists your efforts. This is one of the primary reasons why the same high-intensity workout that produced rapid results at age 25 seems to yield diminishing returns in the modern longevity era. The internal environment has shifted from one of expansion to one of severe restriction, reinforced by the vitamin myth that suggests a standard low-dose supplement is sufficient for health. This is where the high-dose intervention of vitamin D3 becomes a critical strategic move for anyone seeking to break through that invisible ceiling. When calcitriol binds to the vitamin D receptor within the muscle cell, it does not just promote growth. It actively and directly suppresses the expression of the myostatin gene. By optimizing your serum levels to the functional sweet spot of 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter, you are effectively cutting the cables on this biological brake. This suppression represents a profound shift in your internal chemistry. It allows the anabolic signals we discussed previously to work without the constant interference of a growth inhibitor. Clinical pharmacist and researcher reviews have highlighted this specific interaction as a cornerstone of hormonal optimization for older adults. When myostatin is downregulated, the body's innate resistance to hypertrophy drops significantly. You are no longer fighting against your own biology. Instead, you are clearing the path for the structural proteins to do their work. This is the moment when the plateau begins to crumble, and the gains that felt impossible only months ago start to manifest in the mirror. By silencing the inhibitor, you allow the genomic authority of calcitriol to dictate the new pace of your physical transformation. Beyond the suppression of growth inhibitors, vitamin D plays a starring role in the recruitment of your muscle's secret weapon, satellite cells. These are essentially muscle stem cells that reside on the outer surface of your muscle fibers in a state of quiet dormancy, which researchers refer to as quiescence. Think of them as a reserve construction crew, waiting for a specific biochemical signal to begin repairs or expansions. For many individuals over 40, these satellite cells become sluggish and increasingly unresponsive to the stimuli of resistance training. This state of dormancy is a major contributor to the slow recovery and muscle wasting seen in sedentary aging. However, the presence of optimal calcitriol serves as a powerful awakening call for these cells. Vitamin D3 stimulates these dormant satellite cells to enter a state of active proliferation. Once activated, these cells begin to divide and multiply, providing a fresh source of genetic material and protein-building power. They are the frontline responders to the micro-trauma caused by lifting weights, and their activation is the absolute prerequisite for any meaningful increase in muscle cross-sectional area. Without this activation, you are simply repairing existing damage without ever adding new capacity. Once these satellite cells are activated and proliferating, vitamin D continues to govern their behavior, ensuring they move precisely to the sites of muscle fiber damage. The newly created satellite cells actually merge with your existing muscle fibers, donating their nuclei to the overall structure. This increases what scientists call the myonuclear domain, which is essentially the volume of muscle tissue that a single nucleus can manage. By increasing the number of nuclei in your muscle fibers, vitamin D is effectively giving your muscles more engines to drive protein synthesis and structural maintenance. The speed and magnitude of this fusion process are directly influenced by your internal vitamin D status. With optimized levels, the fusion is rapid and robust, leading to the dense, hard muscle quality that defines a successful body recomposition. This is the biological reality of how we repair and grow. It is a sophisticated dance of stem cell activation and cellular fusion, choreographed by the genomic signaling of a hormone that many still mistake for a simple nutrient. If you are finding value in this deep dive into the molecular mechanics of longevity and strength, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and join our community of dedicated biooptimizers. We have reached an incredible milestone together, and your support allows us to continue bridging the gap between cutting-edge clinical research and your daily practice. We are committed to ensuring you have the tools to reclaim your metabolic vitality and move beyond the myths toward a future of peak human performance. As we move forward into the next stage of our journey, we will shift our focus from these structural elements of muscle to the energetic powerhouses that fuel every contraction and every calorie burned. The story of your transformation is evolving, and the most exciting metabolic revelations regarding mitochondrial biogenesis, the master regulator PGC1-alpha, and fat oxidation are still to come. Your DNA has been waiting for the right signal, and we are just beginning to turn up the volume. While the activation of satellite cells and the suppression of myostatin provide the structural blueprint for a transformed physique, a building is only as functional as its power supply. As we move deeper into the human bio-landscape, we shift our focus from the raw materials of muscle to the metabolic engines that drive every cellular action. This brings us to a critical crossroad in the 40-plus journey, the optimization of mitochondrial biogenesis. Within every muscle cell, there are thousands of intracellular power plants known as mitochondria. These organelles are responsible for converting the food you eat and the oxygen you breathe into adenosine triphosphate, the universal currency of energy. However, as the 40-plus high performer knows all too well, these power plants tend to become less efficient and fewer in number with each passing decade. This metabolic decline is mediated by a master regulator known as PGC1-alpha. This protein acts as the primary conductor of the mitochondrial orchestra, signaling your DNA to produce more mitochondria and improve the quality of those already in existence. The revelation here is that calcitriol, the active form of vitamin D, acts as a direct molecular switch for the PGC1-alpha gene. When your serum levels are maintained in the functional sweet spot of 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter, the genomic signaling triggers an upregulation of this master regulator. This is the process of mitochondrial biogenesis. It is not just about having more energy for your workouts. It is about fundamentally changing the metabolic character of your muscle tissue. By increasing mitochondrial density, you are increasing the number of furnaces available to burn fuel. This leads us directly to the fat oxidation link. For many individuals over the age of 40, visceral fat, that stubborn inflammatory tissue stored around the midsection, feels like a metabolic anchor that is impossible to lift. This occurs because the body's ability to mobilize and utilize stored lipids as fuel becomes compromised. However, when vitamin D3 facilitates the expansion of your mitochondrial network through PGC1-alpha, your capacity for lipid oxidation increases exponentially. With more mitochondria available, your body becomes more efficient at transporting fatty acids into these cellular furnaces to be burned for energy. This turns your skeletal muscle into a metabolic sink for fat, even while you are at rest. You are no longer just losing weight through calorie restriction. You are upgrading your internal machinery to prefer fat as its primary source of power. Adding another layer to this metabolic fire is the insulin-like growth factor 1 connection. Often abbreviated as IGF-1, this hormone is a primary driver of the anabolic environment required for true body recomposition. It works in a beautiful synergy with the vitamin D receptor. While calcitriol is flipping the switches for structural proteins and mitochondrial growth, it is also enhancing the production and local sensitivity of insulin-like growth factor 1 within the muscle tissue itself. This dual action creates a powerful metabolic environment where the body is simultaneously signaled to build new, high-quality muscle and to strip away excess adipose tissue. This is the holy grail of physical transformation for the maturing adult. In the second part of our three-part clinical pharmacist and researcher review, these specific anabolic pathways have been highlighted as the focal point of modern longevity science. The experts emphasize that these outcomes are dose-dependent. The standard, low-dose recommendations often found in traditional guidelines are simply insufficient to trigger the level of genomic authority required to upregulate PGC1-alpha or significantly impact IGF-1 signaling in skeletal muscle. It is the high-dose protocol, aimed at reaching those optimal functional levels, that allows the 40-plus high performer to overcome the physiological inertia of middle age. This research validates that the transition from a vitamin-deficient state to a hormonally optimized state is the key to unlocking stalled progress. The 40-plus recomposition is not merely a cosmetic change. It is a profound shift in biological age. By engaging the genomic power of vitamin D3, you are addressing the specific challenge of losing visceral fat while maintaining the precious muscle mass that protects your metabolic health. You are dismantling the invisible ceiling that has kept your progress in check for years. Every time you lift a weight or go for a run, the increased mitochondrial density and the enhanced IGF-1 signaling ensure that your effort yields the maximum possible return. The metabolic fire is now burning brighter and hotter, fueled by the precision of biochemistry. Your body is moving from a state of preservation and storage to a state of growth and efficiency. As the furnaces within your cells multiply and the hormonal signals for repair reach their peak, you are finally witnessing the true potential of your biology. The road to transformation is now wide open, and the structural and energetic foundations are firmly in place, preparing the way for the critical cofactors that will soon govern the final stage of this molecular journey. The journey into the molecular architecture of the 40-plus body now arrives at the most practical and arguably the most misunderstood phase of biological optimization. To move from the theoretical understanding of genomic signaling to the tangible reality of physical transformation, we must navigate the precise hierarchy of serum concentrations. For the 40-plus high performer, simply being above the threshold of clinical deficiency is a failing grade that leads to metabolic stagnation. While traditional medical guidelines often suggest that 30 nanograms per milliliter is sufficient to prevent bone disease, this level is a far cry from what is required for hormonal optimization and muscle hypertrophy. In the realm of high performance, 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter represents a functional range where basic health is maintained, but it is the sweet spot of 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter that serves as the true catalyst for athletic body recomposition. At this elevated level, the occupancy of the VDR within the skeletal muscle reaches its peak, allowing for the maximum expression of growth-oriented genes. However, reaching these heights requires more than just a high dose of vitamin D3 in isolation. Many dedicated individuals fall into the inert supplement trap, a common pitfall where a person consumes large quantities of the secosteroid hormone, only to find that their blood markers refuse to budge or that they experience unwanted physiological friction. This occurs because the human body is a masterpiece of complex synergies, and vitamin D3 does not operate as a lone wolf in the endocrine system. It requires a specific team of cofactors to ensure that the hormonal signal is not only received by the cells, but safely and effectively executed across multiple organ systems. Without these partners, the internal machinery can become clogged, leading to the very plateaus the 40-plus high performer is trying to escape. The first and most critical partner in this process is vitamin K2, specifically in the menaquinone 7 form. If calcitriol is the signal that tells the body to absorb calcium into the bloodstream, vitamin K2 is the expert traffic cop that directs that calcium to where it belongs. Without sufficient K2, the increased calcium absorption triggered by high-dose vitamin D3 can become a metabolic liability, potentially leading to the calcification of the arteries and soft tissues. Vitamin K2 activates specific proteins like osteocalcin and matrix GLA protein, which effectively lock calcium into the bone matrix and keep it out of the cardiovascular system. This is a non-negotiable component of the protocol for the maturing adult, ensuring that the pursuit of muscle hypertrophy and fat loss does not come at the expense of long-term arterial health and cardiovascular flexibility. Next, we must address the fundamental engine of the entire conversion process, which is magnesium glycinate. Every single step of vitamin D metabolism, from its initial transport in the blood to its conversion in the liver and the subsequent renal gateway, is strictly dependent on the presence of magnesium. This mineral acts as the essential cofactor for the enzymes that transform the inactive supplement into the active hormone, calcitriol. If your magnesium levels are low, even the most expensive high-dose vitamin D3 will remain sequestered and useless within your fat cells, unable to reach the nucleus of your muscle fibers. By choosing the glycinate form, the 40+ high performer ensures maximum absorption and minimal digestive distress, providing the metabolic fuel necessary for the VDR to exert its full genomic authority over the DNA. In this third and final installment of our clinical pharmacist and researcher review, the scientific consensus is clear that the synergistic stack is the gold standard for maximizing bioavailability. The experts highlight that the biological interplay between vitamin D3, vitamin K2, and magnesium is not merely a lifestyle suggestion, but a biological requirement for physiological safety and performance efficacy. This review underscores that when these elements are combined in the correct ratios, the body can reach and maintain those high functional serum levels without the risks associated with improper mineral management. This evidence-based approach is what separates the casual supplementer from the serious practitioner of biological optimization, who understands that precision is the only bridge between effort and results. Finally, we cannot overlook the structural importance of zinc in this genetic equation. In the intricate world of molecular biology, the vitamin D receptor itself is shaped by what scientists call zinc fingers. These are structural components of the receptor that allow it to physically bind to the DNA strand with high affinity. Without adequate zinc, the VDR is like a key with no teeth. It may find the lock, but it cannot turn it to initiate the transcription of muscle-building and fat-burning genes. Zinc ensures that once the calcitriol complex enters the nucleus, it can firmly latch onto the vitamin D response elements to begin the work of transformation. This often overlooked mineral provides the structural integrity that makes genomic signaling a physical reality, ensuring that the message of growth is heard loud and clear by every cell in the body. The realization that years of sweat and sacrifice in the gym might have been undermined by a simple molecular deficiency can feel like a quiet devastation. It is the sting of looking back at a decade of training and seeing only a fraction of the physical progress that your effort deserved. For the 40+ adult, this is often the most painful part of the journey. You followed the routines, you tracked your macronutrients, and you pushed through the fatigue of life. Yet the invisible ceiling remained firmly in place. You were told by society that your slowing metabolism and the loss of muscle tone were simply the tax one pays for the passage of time. You were led to believe that the accumulation of visceral fat and the softening of your physique were the inevitable hallmarks of aging that no one could escape. This narrative of decline is a powerful one, but it is a story built on the shaky foundation of medical oversight and biological ignorance. We must now undergo a fundamental narrative shift. The perceived inevitability of aging is frequently nothing more than a systematic failure of hormonal signaling within the body. When you look in the mirror and see a physique that no longer responds to the iron or the pavement as it once did, you are not seeing a broken machine. You are seeing a sophisticated biological system that is currently operating without its master blueprints. By reframing your struggle as a biochemical problem, rather than a moral or physical failing, you finally reclaim your agency. You move away from the frustration of guesswork and toward the cold precision of biochemistry. The transformation we have discussed throughout this journey is not about fighting against your nature. It is about providing your internal nature with the specific tools it requires to thrive. This brings us to the most critical step in the entire process of optimization. Knowledge is the only bridge that spans the gap between effort and results. You cannot manage what you do not measure, and you cannot optimize what you do not understand. The call to action is simple. You must secure a comprehensive blood panel to determine your exact serum levels of 25-hydroxyvitamin D. This is not just a routine checkup. It is a mission into the very core of your metabolic identity. Without this data, you are merely throwing darts in a dark room. Once you know exactly where you stand, you can begin the journey toward that 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter sweet spot. You can begin the process of loading the VDR, suppressing the myostatin brakes, and waking up the dormant satellite cells that have been waiting for their orders to begin reconstruction. It is time to once and for all discard the notion that body recomposition at 50 or beyond is a miracle or a statistical anomaly reserved for those with elite genetics. It is a documented biochemical outcome. When the VDR is fully engaged and supported by the synergistic stack of vitamin K2, magnesium glycinate, and zinc, the human body has no physiological choice but to respond. The internal environment shifts from a state of catabolic decay to a state of anabolic construction. Your mitochondria begin to burn fat with greater efficiency. Your muscle fibers undergo hypertrophy with newfound speed, and your systemic inflammation begins to recede. This is not magic. It is the natural consequence of finally aligning your lifestyle with the fundamental laws of human endocrinology. As we conclude this deep exploration of the secosteroid power of vitamin D3, reflect on the resilience of your own body. For years, it has continued to function and serve you, even while its primary genomic switches were left in the off position. Every workout you perform will be received by cells that are primed for growth rather than mere survival. Now that you have the frequency, and now that you understand the molecular language of the VDR, the invisible ceiling has been removed. The quiet devastation of the past is replaced by the calculated optimism of a future rooted in science. Your DNA has not forgotten how to build strength. It has not lost its ability to burn through fat. It has simply been waiting for the right signal to arrive at the correct volume. You finally have that signal. You finally have the frequency. The transformation you seek is not a distant dream, but a physiological reality waiting to be transcribed by your own hands. You are no longer a victim of time, but an active practitioner of biological optimization. The road ahead is clear, the science is settled, and the power to rewrite your physical destiny is now firmly within your grasp.